Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is graduate. Let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb graduate means to successfully complete an academic degree, a course of training, or here in the United States, we use it to refer to the completion of high school. So this might be a verb that you are already familiar with. It might be one you're excited about occurring in the very near future, but completing an academic degree. Now, related to this first definition is the second one. It says to confer a degree or other academic qualification on another person. Here, with this definition, you might think of a particular college or university giving degrees, right? So we might say this university graduated 100 people in this particular program. So that confer, it's a little more than give because these individuals have worked hard to show they have the knowledge and skills, but if it helps to kind of think about it, right, we're really talking about the school giving the degree and the recognition to a student. A third way graduate gets used means to move up to a more advanced level or position. Sometimes people will use this when they're talking more about informal promotions, right? So maybe their job title hasn't changed all that much, or it's a very small change, but they are taking on more responsibility. Another way graduate can be used can mean to arrange in a series or according to scale. As I thought about this definition, I saw many examples connected to the relating or rating, the rating of gems. So really precious stones. You might think of a diamond as an example. So again, maybe looking at a series of diamonds and arranging them by certain category and by their value. A fifth way the verb graduate can be used can mean to change something, and this something is usually related to a color or a shade, rather gradually, so step by step. So it's not a big, immediate change, but very slight, kind of step by step. Now, for now, you should know that graduate is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, we need to drop the E on the end and add ing. That forms graduating. Now, the past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now, our spelling ends in an E, but when I say the verb graduate, the ending sound is a T sound. This means when I add the ed ending, I need to add an extra syllable. So the ed here is going to make an id sound. So when I say the past tense or the participle forms of this verb, I should say it like this: graduated, graduated. I hope you can hear that extra id on the end of the word. But now let's move on and talk about some phrasal verbs you might encounter. The first you might hear is to graduate from. So again, this generally means someone is completing their studies in a particular school or in a particular program. An example of this: they will graduate from the School of Business in just 2 weeks. Right? So here you might be naming a specific program. A second way graduate from can be used might mean to advance to a higher rank. An example of this: did you graduate from a junior guard to a full lifeguard recently? Right? So again, kind of moving up in terms of responsibility. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to graduate in. Again, refers to completing one's studies, and usually what follows our particle in there is the particular subject or area of study. An example of this: she graduated in biology. kind of letting you know that was her focus or her area of study. The last phrasal verb you might encounter is to graduate with. So this might mean one is completing their studies in a particular school or a program that results in a particular degree. An example of this: he graduated with honors and a degree in psychology last May. So that phrase, graduated with honors, generally means someone has performed really well in school. It might come back to their grade point average or the average of the grades they've received throughout their coursework or throughout their studies. Now, we are going to do a little more verb tense practice, but today I'm going to review how we make questions in the simple future. Today we're going to focus on making questions with will. Okay? This is really common as people make promises and predictions. You might also notice it as people discuss their plans as well. The nice thing about making questions in the simple future with will is that our structure will stay the same no matter what. Now, many times we focus on making yes or no questions in my videos, but today we're going to focus a little more closely on WH questions. Sometimes these get called more information. And the reason for that is to answer a question, I can't say yes or no to it. I need to tell someone something more. So many of our question words start with the letters WH. So that's how we get the other name here, WH questions. But our general pattern here is going to be to start with a question word, use will, then a subject, and then the base verb. And when I say base verb, I mean no suffixes, no S, no ED, no ING. Right? You're welcome to pause the video here at this moment and practice making a few different questions. You can insert different things to sort of build out. But what I'm going to do is continue my discussion of our verb of the day, graduate, and I'm going to make a few different sample questions. So let's start with questions about time. When I say time, I might mean time as in on a clock, or I can mean time as in a particular date. Okay? For either of those things, we use the question word when, W-H-E-N. So an example of this might be, when will you graduate? Okay? So this is a question I know many high school students, sometimes college students, even students seeking professional degrees or graduate degrees. You might get sick of hearing, when are you going to be finished? But that is a very common one. So someone asking you to sort of make a prediction as to when you will have completed all of the requirements. So you notice that pattern there, question word, will, subject, base verb. Another common question is a question about the place or the location. Okay? To do that, many times we use the question word where, W-H-E-R-E. An example of this, where will she graduate from? Right? So here we might be asking, which college, which university? Now, I also want to note, some people may be learning English in very formal environments. And there is a rather old and formal rule that we should not end sentences with prepositions like the word from here. That rule, I believe, kind of originates from Latin and rules in that language. There is not a really hard and fast rule for it. In fact, you'll hear many people end sentences with prepositions, particularly in informal environments. But if you happen to be speaking in a very formal, very professional situation, you might avoid something like this. But with friends, your family, even coworkers, and just more informal conversations, you'll be just fine. Let's move on to another type of question. It's a question of the manner. Okay? An example, or the question word I should say, doesn't follow our WH pattern here. The question word is how, H-O-W. An example of a manner question: how will you graduate from repairing bicycles to motorcycles? Now, here, this is not that formal completion of a degree, but we're really talking about advancing levels here. So we want to know, how is someone going to move from this to another thing? Another type of question we hear quite often is a question to understand why something's happening. We're trying to understand the reason behind it. And that's the question word we use, W-H-Y. Why? Long I sound there. An example of this: why will he graduate so behind schedule? So again, you'll notice these first four questions I have shared with you all follow the pattern of question word, will, subject, base verb. Here we're trying to understand, maybe we thought this person would be finished by a certain point in time, but they aren't quite yet. We want to know or understand the reason behind that. We're going to talk about two more types of questions, and these can be just a little bit different. So one way to ask a question about a thing is by using the word which, W-H-I-C-H. And what's special about this is what comes after it is generally a noun, a plural noun. So we're giving people some options to choose from. Okay? So again, our pattern here, question word which, a noun, and then we'll go back to following kind of our pattern with will and a base verb. An example of this: which colors will graduate in the background of the flyer? Right? Remember one of those last definitions of the verb where we talked about kind of changing the color and having things kind of gradually change, right? Another type of question you will encounter is a question about a person who is responsible for an action. That's our subject. The question word who, W-H-O, is used in that situation, and who is both the question word and the subject. So you won't see a subject in that sentence, or a separate subject, I should say. An example of this: who will graduate in May 2025? Right? So again, we might be asking for some predictions. Maybe if it's family members, they might be asking for a promise. Now let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb graduate. And before I introduce this first word, I want you to notice how I've been pronouncing the verb graduate. Graduate. That last syllable has a W sound and a long A sound. Wait, graduate. Okay. The first word I'm going to introduce to you now is the noun form of the word. It has the exact same spelling, but the pronunciation changes. The last syllable here is going to sound like wit, so graduate, graduate. Okay. This generally refers to a person who has successfully completed some type of course of study. Usually, we will use it to talk about someone who has earned a particular degree. An example of this: I'm a graduate of Valparaiso University, the University of Missouri, and Arizona State University. So there are my three schools. I have completed degrees at all three universities. Now, this word with the same pronunciation, graduate, can also be an adjective. When we use that, we're generally talking about graduate school, so beyond a bachelor's degree or beyond one's first 4 years of college. So you might think of master's degrees, PhDs, medical degrees, other professional degrees like your JD or law degree. An example of this: graduate students will serve as tutors in several courses. Okay? So we're talking about people who have finished their bachelor's, right? But they are pursuing other higher or more advanced degrees. Now, another related word you might encounter is the noun undergraduate. So this is generally referring to a student who has not yet earned a bachelor's degree. This can be at any college or university. An example of this: only undergraduates can enroll in this course. Right? So whatever we're talking about, it's not open to an individual who has already completed their bachelor's degree. Now, the word undergraduate can also be an adjective. So we're describing something that has been either designed for or rather commonplace for those individuals who haven't earned their bachelor's. An example of this: undergraduate research will be featured at this session. And so maybe it means people who have not earned their bachelor's degrees, but who have started doing research in particular areas, might be sharing what they've learned, what they've observed, maybe some conclusions they have reached. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.